Teddy, you were instrumental as Mike Tyson's trainer early in his life. If you had to choose a favorite moment from his entire career in the ring, what would you go with?
I would say his strongest moment, Tony, was when he unified the belts with Spinks. Now, because a lot of people kind of dismissed that. They figure that Spinks had kind of become a guy that was being led to the guillotine, dead man walking, that he was intimidated, that he was lost, he was an empty shell. But this is a guy who was the undefeated light heavyweight champion of the world. He moved up, he beat Larry Holmes twice. There was a lot more to him than people give credit. That night, Tyson was as good as any fighter has ever been when they got in that ring. Complete supreme confidence, power, aggression, command, being a boss, but smart too. I mean, that first knockdown, he goes in there, he hits him with a uppercut. Then he goes over and he finds the opening. He's calm enough to find the opening for the body shot. Then later he understands after he gets up, when he goes in for the finish, he goes in there so relaxed, and he knows that Spinks' best punch is the right hand, so he's ready for it. And he makes the right hand miss, bang, he counters with his own right hand. That's intellect. That's the whole package. That night, Tyson was as good as any heavyweight has ever been.
Yeah, he'd go on to win 50 times in his career, 44 by knockout. Later this hour, we're going to feature the top 10 Mike Tyson knockouts. Teddy, which would you have at number one?
Oh, that's an easy one. It's got to be Trevor Burbick. I mean, first of all, you have to understand the anatomy of the knockout. He was taught up in Catskill with me and Cus D'Amato, and Cus used to always talk about picking spots to hit a guy, behind the ear, on the temple, different areas to liver with the body shot. I hope I'm not getting anybody queasy over there.
None of them.
And I hope not. And this was the shot on the temple. There was no other opening, so he hits him with the left hook on the temple, and what does he do? You saw it. Burbick falls this way, he falls that way, he falls this way, he falls backwards, he gets up, he falls again, he goes through the ropes. You talk about dramatic knockout. You talk about that's for the heavyweight title. You talk about being on the stage on a moment and capturing that moment. That's what that was. That was the coming out. I mean, that was the star going on Broadway and saying, I am a star. Look at me.
Now, Teddy, I want to get your take on this. You're always very honest with what you think. Tyson has been working out at 53 years old, and no denying he looks good. Talks of a comeback have dominated the headlines lately. What do you think when you hear that?
Nobody was hitting back on that video the last time I looked, Tony. Yeah, you
Good
know what I
point.
mean? Listen, in all seriousness, he's an athlete. He's a special athlete. I just said that. I validated that. You don't need me to validate that. His work before has validated that. But an athlete at that level has a certain kind of DNA. It doesn't go away. Muscle memory, genetics. It's still there, even at 53. So he can look good hitting the pads. There's no doubt about that because he was that kind of athlete. But let's not confuse ourselves. Let's not get crazy here. At the end of his career, 20 years ago, a little bit less, he was getting knocked out by guys that were not household names. Guys like Kevin McBride and Danny Williams. Not phenomenal names. Not the kind of guys that he would have to face if he came back now, if they're talking about really coming back with the competition now. So it's kind of like if the great Hank Aaron or the great Willie Mays, and I'm using a dramatic example, but I want to make a strong point because people go a little gaga over this stuff because their own imagination starts to capture them and starts to take them someplace. But if those great baseball players, and they're in their 80s, so let's put them back in their 60s, even in their 50s, and they were in the batting cage, I guarantee you, they'd be hitting some home runs. They'd be hitting some line drives. But if that video got out there on the internet, nobody would be clamoring for him to come back and hit against Verlander or Strasburg in MLB. Nobody, because they know it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah,
This doesn't make sense.
I agree. I mean, just nostalgia is boxing's addiction. And I think us fans want to believe that he's still that Mike Tyson you described who became.
Because he's the boogeyman.
There you go.
Because he's the boogeyman. People want to see the boogeyman come back. They want to see Freddy Krueger 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. You know, and that's the mystique that Tyson has that's different from other fighters. They want to see not just that he can come back and be an athlete again, but maybe a little bit of that morbid curiosity, Tony,
Yeah.
maybe, where people think maybe he'll come back and do something a little wacky, a little crazy. You know, that I think that's all part of the mystique, what we look for in Tyson.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.